Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I'd like to share with you avoiding 4 big risks of gay relationship breakup. You know, as a therapist specializing in gay men and gay male couples therapy for over 28 years now, I've worked with so many different kinds of ages, nationalities, ethnicities, and backgrounds of gay male partners in relationships. You could kind of say I've made a study of it. I teach a course on couples therapy for the officially known Suzanne Dworak Peck School of Social Work at USC for their graduate Master of Social Work students. And in that course, we study very evidence-based practice models for couples. And those are the techniques that have been shown through formal research to have positive outcomes for clients. And one of those is called the Gottman Method, Gottman, pioneered by a husband and wife mental health professionals and couple researchers, John Gottman, PhD, and Julie Gottman, PhD. And some of this comes from the book that I use for the course, The Clinical Handbook of Couple Therapy by Gurman, Gurman. And Dr. John Gottman has taught a now classic structure for understanding what drives relationships in terms of what makes them thrive, but also what undermines them, and sets them on a course for divorce and marriages or breakups and other kinds of relationships. He calls them the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, a biblical reference from his perspective as an Orthodox Jew, mixed with his standing as one of the foremost researchers on couples from his headquarters of the Love Lab in Seattle, Washington, and his appointment at the University of Washington. And he's had some criticism for underestimating or underemphasizing same-sex relationships. He's done this research and says that he's found similar results with straight and gay couples. Some of the criticisms have been that he's a little, as one of my students said, white, hetero, cisgender, Eurocentric, and doesn't really consider issues of consensual non-monogamy or open relationships or poly relationships and that kind of thing. So it's somewhat limited by that. It's also limited by sometimes the sample size of his research and replicating it. Now, despite some of those criticisms, though, his research does kind of pan out about just over many years of observation and also some formal research, too, that's measured of how he arrives at some of these ideas, and they're awfully compelling. So Gottman describes the dreaded 4 horsemen that threaten relationships as number 1, defensiveness, number 2, criticism, number 3, stonewalling, and number 4, contempt. If any one of these is present in your relationship out of proportion to more positive traits, such as sharing life dreams together, your relationship could be on a collision course for ending. So let's look at each of these in turn in the special context of gay men's relationships and discuss some alternatives to protect and improve your relationship instead. So let's start with number 1, defensiveness. Okay, in an argument, you're not on trial. Discussing a problem or impasse in your house is not a formal legal proceeding, and it's not about proving to some invisible judge that you're right and your partner is wrong. Responses to your partner's statements that begin with a contradiction, such as, "No, I don't do that at all. That's crazy. If I do that, it's only because you made me that way." That's not going to get you anywhere. Being invested in invalidating your partner's statements, even if you disagree, instead of hearing them out, again, even if you disagree, is dangerous to relationship health. Gay men can be especially attuned to defensiveness because, without always knowing it consciously, we've had to defend who we are against critics for a lifetime. We've had a lot of practice. So with defensiveness, what's the alternative? Unlike the anti-gay rhetoric and abuse, when it comes to our partner, we want to welcome their feedback. Let them say their piece, get it off their chest. See if you can find any part of what they are saying that you agree with. Even if you want to rush to defend yourself, do the opposite. Attempt to meet them in a place of collaborative discussion and healing. Try to repair, as Gottman says, the breach of agreement you currently have. Say things like, tell me more about this. Why do you feel this way? Ask for clarification. When you say that I do this, do you mean all the time or only on certain important occasional times? See if you can play therapist with them. Tell me how you felt when I did that. Why was that important to talk to me about? Try to validate what they are saying just so that you hear their side in detail. You seem upset. What is it about this that's upsetting you? Rather than engage in defensiveness, try to focus on just neutral exploration of your partner's feelings to understand them in greater depth so that you can get a more reasoned, considered response and not just your initial reaction. So number 2 is criticism. Gay men have been victims of heavy criticism their whole lives, often being told by some factions that we are sick, bad, wrong, inferior, undeserving, or unwelcome. But in partner relationships, Gottman teaches that criticism gets you nowhere. You're such a selfish lout, or you wouldn't know hard work if it bit you on the ass, or any kind of harsh, broad, blanket, aggressive statement that makes a negative declaration about the other person, particularly if it's global. You never do anything around this house. You're such a lazy sack. So we want to take those and say, okay, what's the alternative to criticism? Gottman would say, start with an I statement. I've been very tired lately with work and all this work travel, and I'd really like us to talk about finding a way that we can share these household chores more equitably. Or, when you speak to me like that, I feel demoralized and I feel that I don't want to be around you. I'd like to talk about how we're both communicating and see if we can do it differently. So think of a finger that you're pointing at them and then point it back to yourself and describe what you are and what you feel, not what they are. Add in conditional phrases. There are times when I think you drink too much at parties and you don't realize how loud you're being. I feel embarrassed when you talk too loud in front of all of our friends, or when the alcohol makes you get attitudey with others in what you say. I'm wondering if we could talk about that and try to find some ways to avoid that the next time we're out. So number 3 is stonewalling. This is not about the Stonewall uprising in 1969 that was an act of liberation and a seminal moment for LGBT rights in history. That was great. This kind of stonewalling is bad. It's about putting up a stone wall between you and your partner, and it leaves them as if they're talking to a wall rather than a person. A person's voice, namely from your partner, can't get through a stone wall. Stonewalling someone is when you're walking away from productive communication and you're sending a devaluing message that what they have to say, whatever it is of absolutely no importance to you, and you're not even willing to hear it, let alone negotiate about it. Gottman would imply that if you do this often enough, the relationship will end, because most partners either can't or won't take that kind of dismissive, depressing, condescending treatment from their supposed loved one. This is the equivalent to when nations break down diplomatic relations and then just go to war. Gottman discusses how dysfunction in a relationship involves turning away, like someone emotionally or literally turning their back on you, instead of turning toward your partner in an effort to engage. Build on positive feelings that you can cultivate between the two of you and work through the issues of disagreement, maybe one part at a time. Gay men are still men, and a man's go-to defense in an argument often can be stonewalling, just to go into denial and trying to disappear to avoid the discomfort of arguing. So, what's the alternative for stonewalling? Gottman would say, look for opportunities to make repairs. Is there any part of what your partner is complaining about that you can agree with, even a little bit? Can you acknowledge that the issue they raise is at least important to them, even if it's not particularly important to you? Can you acknowledge how they might be feeling, even if they are getting the facts wrong at first? Can you maybe take a brief break in the proceedings but return promptly to productive discussions and creatively problem solve with your partner together. The opposite of stonewalling is an even exchange of talking and listening, and that talking-listening process is like a path that couples take toward creative solutions to their disagreements. And the last one, number 4, is contempt. This is the one that I find over many years in practice to be the most destructive, and it's a hallmark of a couple that will probably break up shortly after I witness it happening, which is sobering and sad. It's a complete invalidation of what your partner is saying or feeling, often spoken with a sneer or a sarcastic tone or a grumbly harumph underneath it. We all know when we're being talked to with contempt. If you're a theater queen or a film queen and you've seen the classic film Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf or seen the Edward Albee play, much of Elizabeth Taylor's character of Martha does this to her husband George. Or the way that Christina speak to one another in Mommy Dearest. That would be a little camp, and it's kind of an exaggeration, but it still is this contemptuous tone that they have for one another. That's not a healthy relationship. It is of a caustic nature, and contempt erodes love in a relationship. And at its worst, it's the way that people fall out of love and just want the partner and the relationship over for good. So, what's the alternative? I believe, though some may disagree, that contempt comes from a very deep hurt. It comes from someone who is embittered by not having their needs met, or being chronically mistreated, or being chronically frustrated that what is most important to them is always somehow denied them. And it likely has its roots in the partner's family of origin dynamics and possibly past trauma. I think one way to respond to it is to bring a lot of compassion to the person who's being that way, being careful not to sound patronizing or condescending, but to see the person acting like that as a wounded child. Say something like, I can really hear in what you're saying that this means a lot to you. That'll sometimes make a person go from being contemptuous to possibly crying or getting in touch with their sadness that's underneath their rage. Asking simply, what would help, might help them to refocus on expressing their feelings a different way. Asking them, what needs aren't being met for you, is also a way to shift them from bitter complaint to focusing on creative, positive solutions that move the needle forward. And there are many topics in couples therapy interventions that can work. Many theorists, like the ones that we explore in this course that I teach and the ones that I use in my office, they can match or even exceed the theory and practice contributions by the Gottmans, like I said, particularly for consensual non-monogamy or poly relationships. But the Gottman research gives us some excellent insights into what works over the long term to keep both gay and straight relationships healthy and happy, and also importantly, what threatens them at their foundation. And there's much more, where that came from with them than just the four horsemen to their work. Sharing shared goals and dreams, increasing positive communications, building a life together is something they really emphasize. But if you can start by reflecting on your own relationship and considering which of these indicators you might be guilty of yourself in your own recent behavior, it's a start toward gaining the insight you might need to start a troubled relationship back on the road to relief and repair. And if this seems challenging to do by yourselves, and it often is, consider having couples counseling or relationship coaching from a gay men's specialist therapist, maybe me. So this model, the Gottman model, and others that research has shown to be effective. It's not just improvising. It's applying models that have been clinically researched. There's people who do this. That could help you preserve and restore a relationship that you want. So if you want help with this is what I do in LA. You can come to my office in LA if you're in Southern California. And we also do couples work by Skype. There are a number of couples that I work with, one in rural France and another one in Northern California. And Another one in other cities, we call that relationship coaching if it's outside of California, and there's some different goals there. But then a lot of it's in the office because it's two people on the couch at one time. But you can have that help if you would like, and this is, of course, in addition to all the work that I do in individual therapy and individual coaching. For more information on that, you can text or call me. Text is 310-339-5778, so 310-339-5778. Or you can email me, ken@gaytherapyla.com. Or, of course, visit the website. Lots of articles on relationships and sexual issues and sex therapy, and all the other stuff I do is at gaytherapyla.com. And if you just hit the blog tab and search something, anything you want in the search box, there's probably going to be some article that comes up that might help you. There's like 300 articles on there because I've been doing this a long time. But I would be happy to help, and I hope that this material on Gottman and the Four Horsemen can help you to become aware of some of the risks in your relationship, and then also help you to overcome them and make things better. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.